Today on the channel, we got a Thanksgiving special edition of the Kyle Peterson Top 5. Is when I think Thanksgiving, I think the Survivor Series. And I'm going to list my top 5 favorite Survivor Series teams of all time. Welcome everyone, Kyle here, and welcome back to the channel for a Thanksgiving special Survivor Series edition of the Kyle Peterson Top 5. As you guys know, every single Thursday we're counting down a top 5 list of some sort on the channel here, and I'm giving you my top 5 favorite from least favorite to favorite. And today we're doing something interesting. We're doing something totally different, but it's honor of Thanksgiving. Today is Thanksgiving in America. As you guys are watching this, you could be watching it later and it was past, but you guys get the gist. I'm going to do my top 5 Survivor Series teams of all time. Survivor Series was a Thanksgiving tradition as a kid for me and probably a lot of you guys out there. We just had the most recent Survivor Series last weekend as I'm recording this, and Survivor Series really started to lose its way in about the mid-90s for me. And it's funny, I did my list, I'm like, I'm going to look through all these years of Survivor Series, I'm going to pick out my favorite teams, the teams I connected with, the teams I really liked and loved. But all honesty, it really went back to the 80s and early 90s. That's where all of it went. Now, there's reasons for that. That was when Kyle was a young, impressionable kid, just cutting his teeth on wrestling with his favorites out there. Superstars, jobber matches, I was signed up all day long for those. You guys, I loved them. I didn't care it wasn't stars versus stars. Just any wrestling was great for me. And then when you got those star action matches, it was the next best thing in the world. It was amazing. A lot of you guys were probably there as well. But I went back and I looked at all these lists, and really the mid-90s, the Survivor Series really lost a lot of that team aspects to it. There's still teams, there is still to this day a lot of Ross versus SmackDown type things, but just very, very disappointing as they just seemed thrown together. There was no team unity. And you go back to the early days of the Survivor Series, they built things together. They built the story. There was weeks, Roddy Piper, he's building a team. This week he finds, I'm going to bring the Bushwhackers on. And next week we'll find out who Roddy brings in as his next one. And we get Jimmy Snuka, for example. Stuff like that really meant something. Now it feels like guys are just thrown together because they are. Back in the day, there was recruiting going on. And then you'd get stuff where you'd get like, a big champion. Let's say it's Hulk Hogan. And then all of a sudden, Demolition's joining the fight with him. And then you're saying, okay, he's got Hogan and Demolition. Then you get the Powers of Pain on the other side, for example. It really felt the stories and it put stuff together and guys together. And then the elimination style. As a little kid, I just absolutely loved it. Much like the Royal Rumble, it was something different. It was gimmicky, but it was so fun. And I just really think back, that was some of my fondest memories of watching wrestling, was some of those early Survivor Series out there. So really, when I get my list together, I was hoping I'd have some teams from later on. But once we get into this list, maybe you guys will be very similar, maybe you won't. That's the fun of this. I would love to see some of you guys put your top 5 lists in the comments, because I gotta tell you, mine's from my wheelhouse, the olden days, where I just have such a nostalgic feel and love for it. Somebody from Survivor Series 2009 or whatever is just not gonna set my world on fire because they were just thrown together as a team. When they feel special, and that's how they felt back in the day, that's what I gravitated to in my list, and that's what you're going to see in this top 5. So like I always say, it's my top 5 list. Please put your top 5 list in the comments below. So without any further ado, let's get to the top 5 Survivor Series teams of all time as voted by me. All right, let's kick it off at number 5, and number 5 comes from the magical year 1989. Some would say 1989 the greatest year of all time in the history of the world, the history of the planet. 1989. Oh, 1989. I believe Kyle was a young third grader at the time. I think I have that math correct. And I'll never forget October of 1989. The Oakland A's won the World Series, the greatest World Series of all time. Against the Giants, of course. On the edge of the seat, I remember just celebrating when the A's brought it home finally. After that no good Kirk Gibson in 1988. Kirk Gibson, I'll never forgive you for 88. But 89, October 89, the A's won the World Series. Never forget jumping up and down on my grandma's couch. I was spending the night at my grandma's at the time, for whatever reason that was. Beautiful October. Beautiful October. How did we cap it? with a beautiful November, it was time for the Survivor Series 89, and I was excited because my number 5 team for 1989 Survivor Series, we're looking at Hulk Hogan team captain, we're looking at Jake the Snake Roberts, and we're looking at face paint extraordinaires, Demolition. What a team that was. Obviously, Demolition was my favorite WWF tag team at the time. I was all in on Demolition. You guys know me, face paint, mask, looking like Rob Halford from Judas Priest. Man, that's what I'm looking for in my tag teams. Jake Roberts, I always respected Jake Roberts. Never my favorite. I much enjoyed him more as a heel, but I still liked him during this era, so it was cool to have Demolition with Jake the Snake. And then the Hulkster being the team captain. I had nothing against the Hulkster at this time. This is before him and Warrior had to throw down, and the lines were drawn in the sand, and you were Team Warrior, you were Team Hogan. There was no team in the middle, and I was all Team Warrior. I was Team Warrior in 89, but Warrior and Hogan, they weren't crossing paths. Hogan was doing his own thing. I respected his thing from the side. I watched his stuff. But there was no crossover with my beloved Warrior at the time. So I was okay with this, and it just felt huge. Felt cool. Hulk Hogan, the biggest star, the champ, going on. He's got Demolition and Jake Roberts on his team. It just seemed like something special. And as Survivor Series go, I always preferred the 4-man teams over the 5-man teams. I don't know why, but the 4-man just always felt better, looked better, clicked better. I always felt it got a little crowded with 5 or more, as we saw in some Survivor Series over the years. But I was all in on this team. I thought it was great. Not being a Hulkamaniac, I even like this. And I'm putting that at number 5, which really segues into the number 4 team for me. Number 4 was their opponents. So I love number 4. We got the Powers of Pain, the $1 Million Man, and Zeus. I mean, this was very close between 5 and 4, but I'm going back to 89 Kyle. 89 Kyle thought of Zeus as this unstoppable monster, this big, jacked up dude, crossing over from the movie and all that kind of stuff. It was just really crazy, and Zeus, he didn't have face paint, but he had a unibrow. So very similar. Unibrows, face paints, sign me up all day long. But he just looked like a mean, mean dude. And then he had the $1 Million Man, which was probably one of the most underrated heels of all time. He gets a lot of due, but man, he was quite the heel in Hogan's Thorn all the time. He feuded with Jake the Snake Roberts as well, of course, we remember. And then you got the Powers of Pain. Now, the Powers of Pain, a lot of people, much like Demolition, it's a Road Warriors ripoff. Young Kyle didn't know that. He loved all 3 teams. He loved Demolition. He loved the Powers of Pain. He loved the LOD Road Warriors. I was all in. Face paint, sign me up. I'm here for it. So I was cool with the Powers of Pain. I liked the Powers of Pain more than most people probably did back in that day. And it just felt like such a big clash between these two teams with Zeus and Hogan. And, you know, Zeus, I felt like would really beat Hulk Hogan. I really felt like this is the done. This is done. Zeus is going to kill him. He's going to do that, you know, clap against the head thing he did in the movie. It's going to be over. And so I liked Zeus. I was really kind of rooting for Zeus against the Hulkster. I had nothing against really Hulkster at this time, like I said earlier. But I was thinking Zeus would do this, and I was very intrigued to see what Zeus was up to. Powers and Pain and Demolition crossed each other's out. I was just always happy to see those guys together. The whole Mr. Fuji struggle. I want to see them just pulling on Mr. Fuji. You come with me. No, you come with me. Everybody loved Master Fuji. What can I say? And then you got the $1 Million Man as the wild card there. I'm very close between 5 and number 4, but I put Zeus, $1 Million Man, and Powers of Pain at number 4 over the number 5 team of Hulk Hogan, Demolition, and Jake the Snake Roberts. But a magical match. I just rewatched it the other day, and I remembered how much I enjoyed that all these years later. So that is number 5 and number 4. Now let's turn our attention to my number 3 team. All right, we're at the number 3 point of my top 5 Survivor Series teams of all time. Hopefully you got your list. Hopefully you're putting it down below. But for number 3, we go back to that glorious year of 1989 and we visit the Ultimate Warriors. Of course, Ultimate Warriors on this list. Why would he not be on this list? But Ultimate Warrior 1989, he put a magical team together. An interesting team, I guess we'll call it. He added Jim the Anvil Neidhart to his team. It made sense. It felt a little weird with Brett and Jim being separated, but their tag team was kind of broke up at this time. They were loosely affiliated, I guess you would say. They had the same kind of gear. But I remember just being strange as a kid, like, why aren't they together? That seems weird. They're on different teams in Survivor Series 89. Very strange, but it was what it was. Jim Neidhart was with the Ultimate Warrior. And then you added the Rockers. Of course, Shawn Michaels. Of course, Marty Jannetty. And you know they were rocking and rolling, strutting and strolling. Cheap plug, ProWrestlingTees.com. Big Thanksgiving sale going on. You can get your very own rocking and rolling, strutting and strolling t-shirt on my store. So pick it up, support the channel, all that kind of fun stuff. Oh, beautiful shirt. Beautiful shirt. There it goes. But what a team that was. The Rockers, Jim Neidhart, the Ultimate Warrior. And they feuded against, or they had their match against, the Heenan family. Haku Andre the Giant, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, long story with that one we won't get into, but Bobby the Brain Heenan took his place, which I had liked as a kid. Bobby was great in the ring. He was great in everything he did. And he was great in this match. You know, the cowardly heel, bumping around, that kind of stuff. Just beautiful. It was a beautiful match. But of course, my boy, the Ultimate Warrior, the Rockers, Neidhart, they ended up winning it. Andre the Giant, you knew he wasn't doing so well. He was out almost immediately, which was a bit of a disappointment for me as a kid. But I said, you know, this is such a powerful team. They're going to take Andre out right away. They're doing the smart thing out there. So I liked it. I liked everything about it. I liked the heel team with Andre. Haku, very underrated at his time as part of the Colossal Connection, of course. And then Bobby Heenan, probably the most underrated, if that is even possible, performer in wrestling of all time, Bobby Heenan. And then Arn Anderson, he's got his Glock even back then. You don't mess with Arn Anderson. But there was no stopping the Rockers, Jim Neidhart, the Ultimate Warrior on this night. And that's why the Ultimate Warriors were my number 3 team of all time. Now let's take a look at it. The top 2. All right, here we are, the top 2, and at number 2 for me, Mr. Perfect and Demolition from Survivor Series 1990. Obviously, Demolition, talked about it earlier, I absolutely love Demolition. They added Crush to the mix to make it a trio, a 3-man team. I loved it. I was here for it. I was all about it. Their feud with the LOD around this time was stuff dreams were made of. I was so excited for that feud. I felt like it did not get what it deserved. It could have been a whole lot bigger. It could have been a whole lot better. It could have been to the Ultimate Warrior Hulk Hogan levels for young Kyle. I don't know about you guys, but I really felt it was nice to see, but it could have went a lot longer. It could have went different places. Wasn't made to happen. But Demolition and Mr. Perfect. Now, Mr. Perfect, one of the greatest heels of all time. One of the greatest in-ring performers of all time. I've said it before on the channel. I knew about Mr. Perfect. I didn't know as a young kid why I liked him so much. And years later, when you get more understanding of the business and how it operates and certain performers out there, I understood that Mr. Perfect was an amazing wrestler out there. That's what I loved about him. His bumps he would take, stuff like that. It all kind of came together, and that's what I loved. And Bret Hart, another character, very similar to that, Mr. Perfect feeling for me. So Demolition, Mr. Perfect, putting them in a team together, 1990. For Kyle, that's what I was here for. I was all about it. So that was really cool. And then my number 1. So we'll put 1 and 2 together. Number 2 team faced number 1 team. And number 1, there was no doubt. You probably thought, knowing what I like out there, this was going to be number 1. And you were probably exactly right. Because the Ultimate Warrior, the Texas Tornado, and the LOD, my superstar Mount Rushmore of wrestling at the time, and some days still that way, on one team, just united. I'm just shocked, just couldn't believe this. So much superstar power. Still to this day, I couldn't believe when they announced that team as a small kid. It literally blew my mind. 1990 is my year. 89 was so great, but here's 1990. Look what they're doing in Survivor Series. Now, the Ultimate Warrior, nothing needs to be said there. Team captain, world heavyweight champion. Oh, baby, I loved it. I loved every bit of it. But then the Texas Tornado. Now, this was a sleeper one at the time. This is where young Kyle was up on all the wrestling. My friends, they just wanted WWF. They didn't want to branch out to anything else. And young Kyle, he was at the tape store renting tapes. He was watching AWA. He was watching GWF, USWA. He's watching some of the Dallas stuff, all on ESPN back in the day. And then, of course, you're watching WCW, NWA back then, of course. So I was well-traveled in my wrestling knowledge at the time. And the Texas Tornado came along. Everybody's like, whoa, this guy's awesome. This guy's awesome. I was like, well, that's Kerry Von Erich. And nobody knew what I was talking about. But I loved Kerry before then. And man, I didn't know about his issues. I didn't know about his foot amputation, all that kind of stuff. But I knew I absolutely loved the Texas Tornado. I was here for it. I loved it. I was so excited for him and Mr. Perfect to wrestle. And then you add him with Warrior and then the LOD. I mean, that's the cherries on the top. The LOD was such a big deal for me, especially when they came from WCW, NWA to the WWF. And once again, my friends, you guys, oh boy, you're in for a treat with the Road Warriors. They are something else. And they really did take it to another level in the WWF. The red spikes and stuff, very iconic. To a lot of people, the most iconic gear they've ever had. I can't choose. They have all 3 gears. Someday I'll do the top 5 Road Warrior gears of all time. We'll do that in about 10 years when we're really on a top 5 list. But I was so excited for this team. I mean, these were, like I said earlier, my Mount Rushmore as a team. And facing Demolition, who I still loved, and then Mr. Perfect, who I love, it was all my favorite wrestlers in one match. This is why it was so great. That's why they're 1 and 2. There's no swaying it. There was nothing that topped these teams for me on the 1 through 5. I wanted to look into like 2006, 2000. Other years, there was just nothing that captured the love and excitement I had as a little kid. Even in my teen years, I loved wrestling. I loved wrestling to this day. way. It's just nothing captured that initial excitement and that initial excitement I had as a kid watching these pay-per-views. So I'm looking at only 2 years, 89 and 90. I never in a million years thought that's how it would go, but it wasn't even close for me. There was no way I could do it. So very interesting list. Like I said, I loved all the teams on here. I'd love to hear your guys' list. I think some of you guys are probably in the same wheelhouse as me, but I think some people out there, maybe younger, most likely younger, are going to pick some of the teams. Like, you know, when DX had a team with, they have Jeff Hardy, and I could see people gravitating towards that, because what are you most passionate about? It's what got you into the wrestling business in the first place. And this isn't where I started my wrestling journey, but it was still early on for me to be extremely excited as a youngster out there. So I don't know, but you guys tell me your thoughts. Tell me your thoughts on my top 5 list. A lot of you guys probably could have guessed this, I'm sure, but I'm very interested to hear your top 5 teams. I feel it is very tough in the last, 15, 20 years to find teams with that kind of impact of the 5 that I had on my list. But hey, surprise me. Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like this video, of course. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell, of course. All that fun stuff I always tell you to do. Subscribe to me on Twitter, SirPaul64, Instagram, _Kyle_Peterson, of course, ProWrestlingTees.com. Support the channel. And if you're watching this Thanksgiving, you got one more day to support the channel, as we got 20% off at Pro Wrestling Tees. Now is the time. I don't care if you're buying my t-shirts or another wrestler's shirts or somebody out there. At the end of the day, what do I say all the time? Gotta get a deal. Get a deal, get the best deal out there. Pro Wrestling Tees, take advantage of their 20% off sale. So there it is, the top 5 Survivor Series teams. I'm Kyle. See you guys all real soon.